The Syrian civil war, which had largely subsided into a fragile stalemate in recent years, has reignited with a shocking intensity as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, rebels launch a sweeping offensive across the north, capturing key cities and signaling their intent to challenge President Bashar al-Assad's control over Syria. Among their most significant victories are the cities of Aleppo and Tal Rifat, with reports suggesting that HTS forces are now advancing toward the strategically vital city of Hama. The sudden resurgence of fighting has dramatically escalated tensions in a country that has endured over a decade of conflict, raising fears of a broader return to large-scale war. Footage widely circulated on social media offers a vivid glimpse into the chaotic developments on the ground. Videos show abandoned Syrian army vehicles scattered across battlefields, their wreckage serving as evidence of the swift and decisive nature of the rebel offensive. Gunfire crackles in the background as HTS fighters, many wearing makeshift combat gear, are seen celebrating their victories in city streets. One particularly striking clip captures a rebel fighter denouncing President Bashar al-Assad, calling him a dog and declaring the group's intention to take control of Damascus. This rhetoric underscores the heightened confidence among the insurgents and their ambition to challenge the Syrian government at its core. Aleppo's fall back into rebel hands marks a particularly significant turning point. Once Syria's largest city and its economic hub, Aleppo had been a central battleground in the civil war, finally coming under full government control in 2016 after a devastating and prolonged siege. Its loss is not only a strategic setback for Assad but also a symbolic blow to the regime, undermining years of military efforts to consolidate power in the north. Tal Rifat, a smaller city but one with critical logistical importance, further strengthens HTS's position and provides a springboard for their advance toward Hama, a city located closer to the heart of government-controlled territory. The HTS offensive appears to have caught the Syrian army off guard. Reports from the region describe government forces in disarray, with many units abandoning their positions under heavy fire. Videos of abandoned vehicles and equipment suggest that the rebels' rapid and coordinated assault overwhelmed Syrian defenses. This development highlights the continued vulnerabilities within Assad's forces, which, despite years of Russian and Iranian support, remain overstretched and reliant on poorly equipped and undertrained conscripts in many areas. The resurgence of fighting comes amid deepening fractures within Syria. While the Assad regime has maintained nominal control over much of the country, significant areas in the north and northwest have remained under the influence of various opposition factions. HTS, which emerged from the remnants of al-Qaeda-linked groups, has solidified its dominance in these areas, presenting itself as a disciplined and determined force. Its ability to launch such a large-scale offensive suggests careful preparation, likely involving months of planning and the accumulation of weapons and resources. Civilians are once again bearing the brunt of the renewed violence. In Aleppo, Tal Rifat, and surrounding areas, families are fleeing their homes in fear of airstrikes, ground assaults, and the uncertainty of shifting control. Aid organizations are warning of an impending humanitarian crisis as thousands of displaced individuals seek refuge in overcrowded camps along the Syrian-Turkish border. Access to food, medical care, and shelter is becoming increasingly scarce, compounding the suffering of a population that has already endured years of war, displacement, and economic collapse. International reactions to the HTS offensive have been mixed, reflecting the complex dynamics of the Syrian conflict. Western nations, while condemning the violence, have expressed concern over the resurgence of an extremist group like HTS, whose ideology aligns with radical Islamist principles. The United Nations has called for an immediate cessation of hostilities and a renewed focus on diplomatic solutions, though such appeals have often gone unheeded in the past. Russia and Iran, key backers of the Assad regime, have condemned the HTS offensive as an act of terrorism and pledged to support Damascus in retaking the lost territories. Both countries have significant strategic interests in Syria, and any threat to Assad's control risks undermining their long-term plans for the region. Moscow, in particular, may intensify its air campaign in support of Syrian forces, as it has done in previous offensives.
However, with Russia heavily involved in the conflict in Ukraine, questions remain about its capacity to devote additional resources to Syria.
Turkey, which has historically supported certain opposition factions in northern Syria, faces a delicate balancing act. While Ankara has maintained a wary relationship with HTS, it also views the Assad regime as a threat to its own strategic goals in the region. The renewed fighting near its border raises the prospect of increased refugee flows into Turkey, which is already hosting millions of displaced Syrians. The implications of HTS's resurgence extend far beyond the immediate military gains. Their offensive serves as a stark reminder of the enduring instability in Syria and the limits of efforts to impose a lasting peace. The group's bold rhetoric, including vows to march on Damascus, indicates a willingness to escalate the conflict further, potentially drawing the Assad regime and its allies into a protracted and bloody struggle to regain control. The situation remains fluid, with both sides mobilizing resources for what could become a decisive phase in the conflict. For the Assad regime, regaining Aleppo and halting HTS's advance toward Hama are critical priorities. Failure to do so would not only erode its territorial control but also embolden other opposition factions, potentially unraveling the fragile gains made in recent years. In conclusion, the resurgence of conflict in Syria, driven by HTS's dramatic territorial gains, marks a dangerous new chapter in the nation's long-running civil war. The fall of Aleppo and Tal Rifat, coupled with the group's bold claims of targeting Damascus, has upended the relative calm of recent years and thrust Syria back into the spotlight of global concern. As civilians flee, regional powers react, and the Assad regime scrambles to respond, the path forward for Syria remains as uncertain and perilous as ever.